publicists have the same strategy. First, you do 60 Minutes when you're selling a book, and then you go on The View to talk about what you said on 60 Minutes. You saw that happen with the former FBI director, and now you're watching with his deputy, Andrew McCabe. He was on 60 Minutes the other day, and now he's taking a victory lap around America's media landscape. And predictably, he was on The View today to justify the DOJ's plan to spy on, undermine, and perhaps overthrow the elected president of the United States. Here's part of it.
You understand how far we had been pushed to even have a conversation that included those statements. We were all operating under incredible stress. We were all grappling with this idea that we have a president who we think may have committed obstruction of justice, who we think may in fact be a threat to national security. What do we do in this circumstance?
Because Russia! One man who likes the sound of that idea is University of Minnesota law professor and dumpster fire expert Richard Painter. He has endorsed the idea of having the cabinet invoke the 25th Amendment to remove the president. Richard Painter joins us now. Professor, thanks very much for coming on. Good to see you tonight. Good
to see you.
How exactly would this work? It was obviously never been attempted. This is not the kind of scenario it was designed for. But in your mind, how would they remove the president? By force? With firearms? Nets? I mean, how would this play out, practically speaking?
Well, first, Tucker, I want to tell you you're wearing a great tie tonight. I love you having the University of Minnesota colors there.
In your honor.
I've talked about the 25th Amendment a number of times with respect to this president. It was put into the Constitution late 1960s to address a situation in which the president is physically or mentally incapacitated, unable to carry out his duties in office.
No, I mean, we know what it is. I mean, we're not law professors like you, but we know what it is. How would you affect it? How would you do it? Presumably the president wouldn't concede to being overthrown. So would you rush into his office? Would you rouse him from bed? Like, how would you do this?
No, you don't overthrow the president. This is not about overthrowing the president.
Okay.
There are thousands of psychiatrists who have voiced extreme concern about President Trump's
I get it.
state.
You get some compliance shrinks to agree he shouldn't be president. I'm sure you could probably get 99% of them to say that. I would not be surprised.
Under the 25th
But what
Amendment,
do you do?
The cabinet, the majority of the cabinet, and the vice president could temporarily remove the president from office.
But how do they do that? I've read the amendment, but how do they get him out of the office? I assume wouldn't want to go.
That's not the point.
Rush him?
Physically removing.
Okay.
That's not what's provided for in the Constitution, physically removing him from an office. The objective is to have the Vice President of the United States take over the duties of the President temporarily, while the President, for example, would get a psychiatric exam, and then the United States Congress would make the ultimate decision.
We're almost out of time. Just put some meat on these bones. So you're always rushing around. We need 25th Amendment. The President says, I'm not crazy. I don't want to leave. I was elected by voters 2 years ago. I'm not leaving. And then you do what?
If the majority of the cabinet, the vice president, were to temporarily remove the president, then it would be up to 2/3 of the United States House and Senate to permanently remove the president under the 25th Amendment. And the psychiatric exam might very well.
We're out of time. Look, think this through a little bit. Come back, and we can play it all out. Because you've just started your own dumpster fire in my mind, and I want you to douse it with the cool fluid of reason, if you would. Richard Painter, great to see you.
You don't need the dumpster fire for this. No way.
No, you don't. No, you don't. We're out of time. Unbelievably. Could go on forever. Well, the press, known, of course, especially the national press, particularly CNN, for its scrupulous political neutrality. So it goes without saying that the hiring of a single middle-of-the-road former Republican staffer has people hysterical about bias. Former DOJ spokeswoman Sarah Isgur Flores was just hired by CNN as deputy political editor. According to that creepy kid who covers media for CNN, the staff over there were furious. One unnamed reporter called it a, quote, disaster, and said there were ethical implications to working for someone who publicly supported Trump. Of course, there are quite a few former Obama staffers on the CNN payroll. No problem. Here to tell us more about all of this is media reporter Joe Concha, who covers the press for The Hill. Good to see you, Joe. So, just for the record, Sarah Isgur Flores, I know well, and I think a lot of her, but my impression is never that she was some florid right-winger. I mean, I don't know, but I certainly don't have that impression of her. Is she, and why the hysteria over this?
Well, she's worked for some pretty moderate Republicans, whether you're talking about Mitt Romney or Carly Fiorina. Obviously, she was Jeff Sessions' spokesperson. And you're right, the headlines are incredible here. CNN hires GOP operative with no journalism experience to coordinate its 2020 coverage. That was Vox. Esquire, CNN just set the new standard for corporate media's chicken stuff catering to Republicans. Again, CNN catering to Republicans. Every analysis and study I've seen has been overwhelmingly negative towards the president and the administration. But let's put it this way. Let's say CNN hired Valerie Jarrett's daughter, okay? And she was assigned to cover the Trump DOJ despite having no journalism experience whatsoever. Do you think that Esquire, Vox, and all of these other publications would be going nuts right now over a hiring like that of somebody who has no journalism experience but obviously has a bias? And the answer is, we already know the answer because that actually happened in 2017. And you could go down the list. I mean,
really?
Look at George Stephanopoulos.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, of course you didn't. It was barely reported. I wrote about it, I think, 2 years ago, but there wasn't a lot of coverage on that. And again, we see what happened with Hugh Hewitt at MSNBC. Everybody was in an uproar because Andy Lack was trying to bring MSNBC too far to the right by giving Hugh Hewitt an 8 a.m. Saturday morning show for a half hour. He didn't even get the full hour. I was actually on the show. It was quite fun. And it was like, what are you doing? You're turning into Fox News. So that's what happens. You hire anybody from the right in left-leaning news organizations, and they go nuts because it's not conforming to the way things have always gone, like with George Stephanopoulos or like with David Shipley, who worked for the Clinton administration, went on to be a New York Times op-ed editor. And the list goes on, Tucker.
I'm starting to think they're not really in favor of diversity.
Well, it depends on what kind of diversity we're talking about, right? I mean, if we're talking about ideological diversity,
where people are different,
yeah.
Right? They're not into it.
And look, it was overblown. They're trying to say that Sarah Flores is going to oversee all of the 2020 coverage. No, she reports up to people, and there are several people that have the same title that she does. So it's just one person to try to balance things out a little bit. I mean, give CNN a little bit credit in that regard. But then again, I would say that I agree with the left's or left-leaning publications when they say you could have hired 100 other political editors here that can't be kind of compromised in any way, because we saw what happened at CNN, obviously, with Donna Brazile when she got her hands not once but twice on town hall debate questions and passed them on to the Clinton campaign and said that was my priority over my priority with CNN.
Unbelievable. Oh, Joe Concha, great to see you. Thank you.
Good to see you.
The media everywhere is mostly liberal, not just in the U.S. But in this country, 85% of journalists are registered Democrats. So that's just a fact. We have few conventions, if you like, because they're not really rules, but that you need at least 2 first-hand sources for something, right? Those things help keep you, keep your work to a certain standard. Those standards are out the window. I mean, you read one story after another or hear it, and it's all based on one anonymous administration official, former administration official, right? I mean, that's not journalism. Sorry, that is absolute.
It is absolute horse. All right, former 60 Minutes correspondent, journalist Lara Logan, bravely stating what so many people already know about the mob media's liberal bias. She didn't mince words. She told the truth, even risking political career suicide in the process. Lara joins us now. Great to see you. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Sean.
Just so you know, just so people know, how many years did you spend out with our troops in Iraq and Afghanistan? How many tours of duty, years, months?
Well, I lived in Iraq for 5 years. I lived in Afghanistan for a year, and I went to Afghanistan dozens and dozens and dozens of times, and I've been back to Iraq before I lived there. I was there under Saddam Hussein. So, I mean, I was pretty much on the battlefield most of the time from 9/11, and it's only been since I had my children that I've kind of, and of course, since I was almost killed in Egypt, that I've sort of
I want to remind
back.
people, you nearly died in Tahrir Square in Egypt in the Arab Spring. Geraldo told me, I never knew this, that he had a video of your vehicle getting hit with an IED. I never knew that story. Is that's true?
Yes, that's true. It was, I think it was way back in like 2003 when we were blown up by a double anti-tank mine on the Afghan-Pakistani border at a place called Lozano Ridge. And Geraldo and his brother were a few vehicles behind us in the convoy. And Sean, you know how incredible this is? In those days, the United States military did not even have armored Humvees on the battlefield. If you think about what that context brings, They didn't even
that was
have
a sin.
armor on their vehicles. They didn't even think they needed it.
Wrong, so wrong. And I bring this up because, wow, I mean, you risked your life to report. And I watched you on 60 Minutes. I always thought you did a great job. And you say this, which is just a fact, and it's chronicled. And look at the media today. I say I'm a talk show host. I say I also do opinion and news and investigative reporting. I do it all. And 85%, I think it's closer to 90, that are liberal. And you can see it. And you say you need two sources. That's so far gone. Why, if you tell the truth like that, do you believe you just pretty much committed career suicide?
Well, it's obvious, right? Because you get targeted, and it's the same group of people. They're already starting to target me again now, and I expected it. And, you know, I was joking that I'm braced for fire and fury, because I know they're going to come after me again, and I'm not the only one. I mean, the same people come after you, right? One of them, the Sparrow Project. I mean, this person was tweeting today, you know, Hannity, you know, watch out about Lara Logan stuff, right? And there's more coming. Michael Calderon, who was at the Huffington Post. I can literally give you the script now. I can tell you who the players are. Joe Hagan, Brian Stelter. I mean, it's the same people all the time, and they're all saying the same things. And they come after Cheryl Atkinson. They come after you. They come after me. I mean, if there are any independent voices out there, if there are any journalists who are not beating the same drum and giving the same talking points, then we pay the price. And if they can't, you know what's interesting, Sean? They can't take down the substance of what you're saying, right? They can't go after the things that matter. So they smear you personally. They go after your integrity. They go after your reputation as a person and as a professional. And they'll stop at nothing. So, you know, I'm not the only one. And I'm just like, I'm done, right? I'm tired of it. And they don't get to write my story anymore. They don't get to speak for me. I want to say loudly and clearly to anybody who's listening, I am not owned. Nobody owns me, right? I'm not owned by the left.
I don't even know what your politics are. I really don't. I don't know.
Because it doesn't matter. Because it doesn't matter. I'm not going to lie to you and pretend I have no biases. That's just not true, right? I mean, that's a part of who we are as human beings. We all have opinions on things. I don't pretend I don't have opinions. My point about the sources is that I've worked with so many great journalists. I can tell you many of their names. Sarah Carter is like one of them, right? I have so much respect for her work. And there are so many people at 60 Minutes and in many other places who I have such great respect for. And it's because I didn't invent this. Journalists have always needed two independent, first-hand sources. That's always been the standard that we work to. It's not me. I'm not alone. I'm not the only one. And, you know, I mean, people know. People know that we've slipped. People know that when you're not, when those are no longer your standards, that you're, you know, that raises questions if you're honest.
I would love, I've met your husband, who, I don't know if he's going to like I'm saying this, who's really an American hero. And I know you guys are raising your kid. I mean this sincerely. I hope my bosses at Fox find a place for you. I know that you want to still do great work and independent, and I think it would be a service if you did. I hope that you telling truth doesn't end up in career suicide for you. We need the fair, honest, investigative voices, the people that do.
What's funny, you know,
look for the sources.
I heard one of your paid people on Fox saying that it sounded like a job interview to me, and then going on to put a whole lot of words in my mouth that actually I never said. You know, let's just be honest. Like you know, look at the interview, hear what I said, and then listen to him, and you can see I didn't say that. I don't need to fall back into dishonesty. And by the way, it's not a job interview, right? I don't know if Fox would want to hire me because nobody's going to own me.
But I got to run. You keep up the good work.